Hi, everybody. I'm Gary Gomes, and I'm here to talk with you this week about Vedic astrology and what the planets mean for you in particular. I'll also briefly discuss the eclipse coming on November 20th, 21st, and see what that means for you. We'll also be taping a show with Lolita Donatella Rebecca and discussing the year in advance, probably sometime this coming week. So let's get this show on the road. By the way, if you like what I'm doing, please feel free to smash me in the face or smash that like button. And also like, subscribe, and forward. We're at around getting close to 400 subscribers, which is great. But we need 1,000 for YouTube, and the amount of time the videos are watched should amount to 10,000 minutes. We're in the eights, so that's actually pretty good. So that's just a shameless plug, and I hope you don't mind me plugging myself, but uh, I need to do it so I can encourage you to do it. So smash that like button, let your friends know, let your enemies know, let anybody you care about know, and I'll see you in the stars. All right, so it's right now it's Saturday, the 13th of November. Saturday the 13th. Oh boy, okay. So, and the moon's in really one of my favorite signs, Aquarius, and it's really self-referential because I have Aquarius in my chart. And what we're looking at right now is the chart for when we're talking right now. And the topic the reference point I'm going to use is eclipses. And essentially, eclipses are in and of themselves aren't particularly dangerous. It's usually considered not a good idea to do any new acts or any activity. In certain parts of India, people are told to stay inside and not do anything important during an eclipse. But it is also in the Tantra tradition sort of a time to make changes in a person's life. Eclipses can often force these changes. They're not necessarily bad things. Eclipses are caused by the separation of the zodiac by two what are referred to as Ashuras. Ashuras are technically, for shorthand, they're referred to as demons, but not demons in the Western Christian sense. They're more really, I like to refer to them more as the predecessors to the gods. So at one point, the Devas and the Asuras both belonged to the same tribe, basically, at least in Indian thought. Or they both had the same mother. Okay. And basically one side strove for the preservation of the world or order, and one side was more chaotic. So for those who have strong Ashuric tendencies in their charts, they'll tend towards disorder or chaos a bit more. Now, these two aren't necessarily, chaos in itself isn't an evil concept. It's essentially in a planned world. It's essentially a disorderly world. You have to have order in order to have a certain amount of life. but life itself is disorderly. The construction of the world itself is rather disorderly if you look below the surface. But it has to organize in certain ways in order to form life. Okay, so life consists of a series of biological processes which require intake, maintenance. They're guided to a certain extent by intelligence, and when I'm saying intelligence, that actually goes back to wants and needs. So if an organism doesn't have any desire for food, then that organism is going to die, right? So, and the Asuras are all desire and abandonment. You know, they're essentially forces that keep the universe, or forces that would essentially make the universe, put the universe into a state of disarray. Okay, so essentially, I always tend to view the idea that the Asuras, especially Rahu and Ketu, were allowed into existence by Vishnu. And the reason I say that is because Vishnu is omniscient. He would have known which beings had partaken of the elixir of immortality and which ones hadn't. And he allowed them to take it. You know, he essentially knew they were taking it. And when the sun and the moon lit up and said, oops, these beings took the elixir of immortality, they're assured they shouldn't have that. Then Vishnu took off his discus, and cut off their heads. And the head lived, which is Rahu, and the tail lived, which is Ketu. So essentially, we would have had, without these two beings, we would have had, I would say, a more orderly universe, but also a universe which didn't allow for spiritual progress. So everything would be perfect, stationary. Things would speed up, things would slow down, things would grow, things would evolve, but we wouldn't have desires or ambitions or major disturbances, which are part of creation anyway. Okay, so that's my take on it. They're not necessarily evil, they're just difficult to deal with. And whenever you see Rahu and Ketu in a chart, they eclipse. Their primary function is to disrupt the other planets or to amplify the other planets. So if Ketu's with the sun, it obscures a lot of the sun. Ketu's birthplace is in Leo. Okay, so it's essentially Ketu would not exist unless there was a sun to give birth to it, unless there were a sun to obstruct. Rahu would not exist unless there were a moon for it to worry or to make anxious. Okay, so essentially, and Rahu's exalted sign, at least in certain texts, is Taurus, where the moon is also exalted. There are different beliefs out there, or different traditions which say that Rahu and Ketu are both exalted in Scorpio, which is, you know, sort of an underground sign, or that Rahu is exalted in Gemini, which is a sign connected with intelligence, but also with media communications, essentially made up things, so acting basically, and Ketu is associated with Sagittarius. But I find the Rahu in Taurus exaltation and the Ketu in Scorpio exaltation to be very elegant, because Rahu likes material things. Rahu likes, it wants what it sees. You'll see pictures of Rahu and it's this big head with fangs coming out because it's Nishara. But also, you'll see the eyes bulging out. The eyes will look like they're they really want something, or they see that. The tongue is hanging out, and it's this flying head. And K2 is represented as living in this large snake-like body, which we could associate with the arising of spiritual energy. So Rahu accumulates things. K2 dispenses with things. It dispenses with them through either. So Rahu will make us want to acquire things, make us want to get things, and K2 will make us want to get rid of things. And K2, Rahu does that through a variety of ways. It does it through making us greedy. It does it through making us curious. Okay, so Rahu is also connected with curiosity. Curiosity is very intelligent Graha. They figured out how to trick the other planets into getting the elixir of immortality. And K2 is connected with disruptions which make us abandon certain paths, or thieves which steal things away from us, or um, or things which make us give up the things that Rahu pursues in order to reach enlightenment. Rahu's maturity comes at the age of 42, as I discussed planetary maturities last week, and lasts until roughly the age of 48. So that's when a person thinks they want to start to acquire things, whether it be honor or glory or just stuff. And Ketu, and also Rahu gives second chances. So if a person wants to try something new in life, Rahu gives it a chance to try something new in life. Ketu gives a person a chance to reflect and achieve goals of selflessness, or even achieve greatness in life, but from a very unselfish perspective. It can also be disruptive in the Ketu is often associated with earthquakes and natural catastrophes. The way my German teachers expressed it was happenstance. Now, happenstance, as an English term, is fairly neutral. From what I understood, the way my German teachers used it was essentially catastrophe. Okay, so K2 causes problems, it causes disruptions, it can shock a person into enlightenment by taking away everything they value. Okay, so it's a little bit difficult as a planet. It doesn't mean that everybody who goes through a K2 transit or goes through a Rahu transit is going to be impoverished or sick or subject to earthquakes, or that Rahu is going to make them paranoid or greedy or selfish. It just unsettles the person. It makes them take on new perspectives and new outlooks in life. It makes them reconsider. And in the Mahadasha sequence, the Vimshottari Mahadasha sequence, Rahu leads to Jupiter, which is, so Rahu is, I've had it with this material life. I'm going to seek out a teacher who's going to help me gain knowledge. And K2 leads to Venus, and it says, all right, I've put forward my best effort. I've had everything taken away from me. I'm going to relax a little bit and maybe enjoy life. So the sequence of Mahadashas are actually pretty, they tell a story in and of themselves, at least the Vimshottari Mahadashas. And the other ones, the conditional Mahadashas or major planetary periods, also tell stories. But the Rahu and Ketu story is intended to disrupt for the purpose of gathering stuff, and also for the purpose of giving it up. And K2 is also connected. I had a conversation with a gentleman the other night. K2 is also, excuse me, I need to check something. K2 is also connected with one pointedness or concentration. I achieved my doctoral studies during a K2 Mahadasha. So I really didn't care about grabbing stuff or learning stuff. I cared about focusing. That was really my primary goal in life. So not every way is the same. K2 in your chart won't necessarily produce the same thing it did in my chart. My chart was set up for that. Your chart may be set up for something different. And that's why you need to see an astrologer. I do teach astrology. I do take readings. I've done it since roughly 1991. So about 30 years of solid readings. I started studying in 1990. I started taking readings in 1991, which is pretty vast, but I seem to take to this like a duck to water. So, and occasionally I'll quack. All right. So right now we have a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. Again, this is going to cause inflationary pressure because Saturn is limiting our access to goods. And I think it's no small accident that is happening at this particular point in time, because the last time was, if I recall correctly, I've been hearing some combinations, but the Gulf War, when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, prices went up, and this gives us some fear over a lack, this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. Now, this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction didn't occur then. It occurred a bit later on when we went to war, or not, excuse me, not when we went to war in Iraq, but essentially a couple of years later. And so that gave some fear, some anxiety. The other thing this combination does, and you'll be seeing a change around November 21st, Jupiter is going to move into Aquarius. And we've already heard news about new viral cures for COVID. We've heard more about vaccination rates increasing, but people still getting sick. So the vaccinations were essentially what I would call an essential first step. But research has been ongoing. The Economist just published an article about new viral cures for COVID. There's been some success with immunotherapy. And I think by and large, we're going to see COVID over the next 3 to 4 months basically become less and less important part of our lives. This is like the last major issue we'll have with COVID over the next 3 to 4 months. And that's when Jupiter can do its job and introduce cures as it passes over Saturn Nakshatra. And you'll see a lot of cures coming out. And I think also you'll see some refined vaccines, some more effective vaccines coming out. So I'm not going to talk about the efficacy of the vaccines. I'm not an expert on it, but basically, we're making progress. That's given. Also, there'll be less of an inclination for what I would call perfection or obstruction of progress after around mid-December, when Mars moves out of Libra and into Scorpio, but there will be increased potential for violence. I have to warn you about that. That Mars K2 conjunction can be nasty. So I would expect violence. I expect some illness to the president, based upon the information we have in his chart, President of the United States. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some kind of assassination attempt or some attempt to drive him from office over the next 3 months, or even some serious illness hitting him over the next 3 months. So I'm hoping I'm wrong about that, because I don't like to see anybody sick. But the next couple of months don't look too good for him. And like I said, I hope I'm wrong about that. The combination of Venus in the 12th house is slowly moving out of Mula Nakshatra into Purashada Nakshatra, which should make people a little bit more conciliatory, more concerned with luxury, more concerned with helping themselves and helping the world around them. Venus in Mula has also introduced some disruption in relationships, with some paranoia about relationships, but the nature of relationships changes when Venus is in Mula Nakshatra, and Mula is a very destructive nakshatra, as I just said. The other thing we have is we have Sun, Mercury, Mars. So a lot of governments around the world are upset. A lot of people around the world are upset with their governments. I did see actually an article that surprised me. It was a headline in the Wall Street Journal yesterday that Europe is considering, the European Union is considering building a wall because it's getting a lot of refugees from Belarus and Eastern European countries and Syria. It's just, it's not unique to the United States that we would consider those things, because Europe's been suffering under immigration strains for the past 20 years or so. And some of those have been associated with concerns from the French government, in particular, about terrorism. So I don't know how many people know this, but burqas and other face coverings were banned by the French government in the early 2000s, because they wanted to project the image of a sectarian or a non-sectarian society. And that caused a lot of disruption. England went through riots in Brixton, in the early 2000s. So problems with race and problems with and reactions against immigration are not unique to the United States. There's this misconception that we're being given right now that this is a uniquely American, United States issue, and it's hitting really all across across the world, mainly because there are large flows of people wanting to get away from wars, or wanting to get away from, or wanting to have better lives. So it's not unique to us. It's a global phenomenon. The other thing is Mars and Mercury are in conjunction. So again, we're going to have, and they're in pretty tight conjunction. As a matter of fact, they were exact on Thursday. And so this conjunction is detrimental to communications. It will give some lying or some quick thinking in communications. It makes people a little bit energized. That much is true. So it would be a lot easier to write things. But it also tends to give media in particular, so they sort of like feel they have a license to misrepresent things. And I'm not talking about far left or far right media. I'm talking about all media. And the government right now is weak. is weakened because it's in Libra, Sun's in Libra, and almost all governments are facing some problems. The Sun K2 conjunction, I'm kind of worried about different parts of the world being subject to overthrows of government, whether they're deserved or not, and violence against the government around the time of the eclipse, around August 20th. The other thing that I would look for is people expecting a perfect world and being disappointed and acting out when they don't get exactly what they want. So there are several criminal proceedings going on right now, and a lot of those are racially loaded in the United States, and this actually the same is true around the world. So you'll start to see some cases determine the way people won't want to see them determined, and that'll lead to some violence. Okay, we're talking about things like earthquakes. There's usually about a 3 to 9 month range in which an earthquake can develop because of a Sun K2 conjunction or a Moon Rahu conjunction. So let's go a little bit ahead to the 20th. Uh, 21st. So I'm going for the exact time of the Sun K2 conjunction. So that'll be the 22nd, probably. Oh, sorry about that, folks. Oh, so far off. So the 23rd. I go to the 24th. My apologies, folks. All right, so Sun and K2 are almost exactly conjoined on November 24th. So this day is going to be a day to watch out for. But I would say the entire period from the 20th to the 27th looks to be a challenging period for people, especially in terms of hidden matters coming out, relationship problems coming out, people being a little bit more greedy than normal, and people being more prone to disruptive acts. So between now and roughly December 4th, December 7th is the time to be careful about accidents, careful about be careful where you are, basically, because it'll be kind of a dangerous time. Also keep in mind, Libras, people who are born October 15th to November 15th, or people with Libra moons or Libra suns, be careful driving, be careful transportation-wise. It's going to be kind of a difficult period. So let's look at the world map, because I don't want to take up too much more time on this. But you will see some political disruption over the next few weeks, and also I think some possible natural catastrophes. So let's see if we can isolate those. Okay, so the sun and the moon intersect over sun and moon lines. There's a Rahu line close to Hawaii, close to Kauai in Hawaii. So you may see an overflow of that particular feature over there. There's a water feature that fills up and floods in Kauai, which is quite dramatic. So you may see an incident like that happening. Also, sun, moon, and Venus are affecting Alaska, upper northwest Canada, and Southern California. So Southern California may actually calm down a little bit over the next couple of weeks. We're hoping. So you may not see quite as much disaster or quite as much elements of fires or other catastrophes. But Venus does cause landslides, so you have to be careful. Mars and Mercury are hovering over Texas, New Mexico, it looks like, and all the way up into, I need to distinguish these states, North and South Dakota, Montana. So essentially that part of the state, there's going to be some kind of misreporting or misanalysis of news. And I have a strong feeling it has to do with immigration. The sun is hovering over Wisconsin, Iowa, Kansas, and Louisiana. So that's going to give some problems to that part of the country in terms of government. So there'll be some anger connected with government in those parts of the countries. Increased crime rates too, by the way. And I'm looking for this line right here. It's a sun line. And there's a Saturn line passing over. It's passing relatively harmlessly over the Gulf of Mexico, but the Saturn line is intersecting up into Louisiana, into Mississippi, and throughout Ohio and Indiana. And there's a Jupiter line passing over the Northeast. So the Northeast of Washington. So again, this is not a time of good judgment on behalf of government. That time is thankfully close to being over, but I have to say, in all honesty, the government will make some stupid decisions around this time, and because Jupiter's debilitated, and let's see now. The moon is going through Argentina, Brazil. So this country, Brazil in particular, has been struggling with COVID. There's a Venus line passing over. So there's, again, some flooding around the Amazon, or close to the Amazon, some water problems, water disasters. Let's see now. Mars and Mercury are passing by West Africa. So some problems with anger or violence in that part of the world. Saturn is passing close to Portugal. So there'll be some economic hardship in Portugal. Jupiter is passing through France. So again, we're going to, in Algeria. So we're going to see some governmental problems, some judgments which are not that great. Venus is passing through Denmark, though, and all the way through Turkey. So those countries should be left alone in terms of catastrophes or problems. Economically, they'll do a little bit better. Moon is passing over Eastern Turkey and Eastern Europe. I'm sorry, Western Turkey and Eastern Europe, and through Somalia, Egypt, Chad, and South Africa. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. That indicates some change in the population and also increased medical benefits to that population. In terms of, and there is a Venus line going through the Suez Canal, so maybe that can point to the idea that some of the blockages in transportation will be loosening up a little bit. Saturn's passing over Afghanistan, Pakistan, and close to India, and Mars and Mercury are in central India, so this indicates some kind of government scandal as far as I can see. And Sun, yeah, so Sun over here, weak government in Bengal, government scandal in central India. And the Saturn line going right through it isn't good either. So there could be some bad news coming for the people of the Bengal region. Rahu is passing over China and over Myanmar. So we're probably going to see some kind of dissatisfaction with the government in general, and maybe even some protests. And let's see now, I need to go over here. And a change in government now towards the Philippines, Borneo, Australia, Western Australia in particular. And Australia itself looks like it's actually coming out of a bad period right now. And the Mars Mercury lines are hitting more eastern Indonesia, and they're affecting, and the economy in New Zealand is slowing down a bit. So these aren't like earth-shakingly bad things, but the parts of the world I look out carefully for over the next few weeks would be eastern Alaska, Alaska, central United States, especially with Louisiana, Texas. Let me see now. Governmental problems in Portugal, England, and Ireland. And public disrupt, unrest in Southwest Africa and in the Middle East. Government scandals in India or lies. And let me see what Japan looks like it's doing pretty well though this next week. So let's go back to your charts. And basically your charts have so let's start with Aries. Aries is still confounded by its ambition to make more money, although its financial opportunities are going to increase greatly over the next 3 months. It will still feel like it's not enough money. And relationship life, Aries will have a lot of arguments with people in its life. especially relationship partners. And this is a time when the sign will have a lot of relationship questions for itself. Um, Relationship partners will seem kind of weak or kind of difficult to get along with, and they won't be really, to be honest, trustworthy. But career life looks fairly good, and they'll see some gains, some financial gains, so their income status will improve. Rahu is in Taurus in the second house, so that's given this sign May 15th to June 15th. And Scorpio, which is November 15th to December 15th, some problems or unhappiness in relationship life, or some feeling of boredom or entrapment in those matters. And they'll also have some health issues, but a lot of the health issues will pass after Sun enters K2. But I think one of the things after Sun enters Scorpio, excuse me, but I think one of the things you'll see happen is one situation will get a lot worse around November 25th, and then the health issue will be resolved. It'll get a lot better. The other thing is Jupiter's in the ninth house, so it's good for career. And this sign may go through a change in careers over the next month or so. Also, good gains of money from relationship partners. For Gemini, Gemini has critical planets in the fifth house, so that corresponds to children and past life credit. But this is actually not a bad combination. It's sort of a wealth-producing combination in the chart. Although Mars really isn't a good sign for Gemini, or it really isn't a good planet for Gemini, but it does give financial gains, and it also gives some enemies or some competition. The K2 in the second house, again, K2 in the sixth house, again, health issues seem to be prevalent for this sign. So you have to watch out in particular for your stomach and your gastrointestinal tract. Venus is in the seventh house, so this sign will be happy at least for another couple of weeks in relationships. Jupiter and Saturn are in the eighth house. Relationship partner will seem to be doing well, will seem to be buoyant and happy and grounded. Moon is in the ninth house, so that indicates, again, a change in bosses or a change in career direction, change in educational direction. Rahu's in the 12th house, again, what I would call excessive spending. Only you know yourself whether or not it's excessive. For Cancer, Cancer has the moon in the eighth house, which can make it a little bit discouraged or a little bit down. Saturn's in the seventh, which will make it very disciplined. And Saturn backs up the moon, so it actually indicates with hard work, financial prosperity ensues. And overall from the chart, it doesn't look like a bad month. Jupiter's in the seventh house, about to enter the eighth house, so it can actually give financial windfalls to the sign. For 1, 2, 3, 4. Rahu is in the 11th house, so it'll give temporary gains and aspirational gains. So people wanting to get recognized will be recognized. But again, children will be a little bit of a problem, and the ability to feel like you're really pursuing your ambitions will be a little bit stretched. For Cancer, okay, so we've already done Cancer. Cancer gives stable relationships, fights with partners, some minor health problems with kidneys. Relationship is stable, and legacies are indicated for the sign. For Leo, Sun is in the third house, so it's not quite as confident or as ambitious as it would normally be. but it's with Mars and Mercury, so it's fighting itself in terms of getting discouraged. The Sun K2 conjunction next week, we'll talk about that a little bit more next week, will also make it a little bit crankier. I feel like people are lying to it. The Venus is in the 5th house. That means the possibility for more romantic relationships, although there's a possibility you may have unrealistic ambitions for your relationship partner. And Saturn and Jupiter in the 6th, so this sign has to watch out for his health too, especially from exhaustion and from overeating. 7th house gives a change in relationship partner and change in business partnerships to the sign. Rahu's in the 10th house is a good combination for career success or career notice at this time. For Virgo, Virgo has 3 planets in the 2nd house. One is the Lord of the 12th house, so money will be spent more quickly. That'll be recouped pretty quickly and by mid-November, but there does seem to be a lot of expenses coming on. And also, Sun is, and again, keep something in mind, by mid-November, Sun and K2 will be in conjunction, so there'll be expenditures for educational purposes. And that'll be fine, but long term, really, we're talking about 2 months before finances get better for the sign. And for the Lord of the 1st house is in the 2nd house along with Mars. So again, it's good for financial gains, good for career life, good for overall success. Some windfalls to relationship partners. For Venus in the 4th house, home life will seem to be relatively sedate and relatively comfortable. Saturn and Jupiter in the 5th, so some problems with creativity. Moon is in the 6th. This will give some worry about enemies on the job or people trying to undercut you on the job. Rahu's in the 9th house, so change of supervisor is indicated for this sign. And that's been actually an ongoing phenomenon over the past year or so, but basically supervisors will be a little bit difficult to please or a little bit difficult to make happy. For Libra, we have 3 planets in the 1st house. One's a debilitated Sun as Lord of the 1st, as Lord of the 11th house. So there should be some financial gains, even though they'll be weak. Mars, a Lord of the 2nd house, is in the 1st house. So that creates what's called a Dana Yoga or wealth producing combination. And the Lord of the 9th house is also in the 1st house. So that's good. There'll be expenditures for what I would call ordinary expenses for education, but nothing extraordinary. K2 is in the 2nd house, so this sign will seem to say the wrong thing at the wrong time. And you'll have to be careful about that, especially around November 24th, November 21st and 24th. The other thing is Venus is in the 4th house, is in the 3rd house, so this sign will be going out of its way to be polite and courteous. Jupiter and Saturn are in the 4th house, which will give, again, more educational opportunities, but they'll be slow coming. Moon is in the 5th house, good for overall luck for the sign, good for career luck. Any career changes will be for the better. Rahu in the 8th, marital partner will seem to be tough to please or tough to make happy. So let's go to Scorpio. K2 is in the 1st house. As I said, the sign has a lot to be careful about next month or within a couple of weeks, but right now it's okay. Spouse will be famous or well known, but there'll be some contention with the spouse, and spouse will also be controlling. This sign is a little bit confused or befuddled right now. This is sort of like the indication of K2 and Scorpio, but it'll still be relatively slick and lucky. Venus is in the second house, so there'll be some improvement in terms of how the speech of these individuals are perceived. Jupiter and Saturn are in the third house. Some of the ambitions of this sign are not really practical, so that's something to keep in mind. Moon is in the fourth house. It will give a slight improvement in status, especially because of health-related issues over the next month or so. And we already spoke about Rahu in the seventh house, but let's go to career-wise and supervisor-wise. This sign should do well this month. And we have 3 malefics in the 12th house. And basically what that does is it causes a pretty heavy expenditure flow and even some scandals surrounded around the sign, so be careful. For Sagittarius rising, we have Venus in the first house, so this sign is going to seem to be very happy with life, very contented, and also very focused on enjoying life. For those of you who are involved in cinema, or you'll see a rebirth of cinema box office during this nakshatra. Jupiter and Saturn will be still kind of cheap with this sign, and Saturn's in the second house, so it's going to make earning money a little bit tough, but I think you'll start to see some problems on the home front because of Saturn's unobstructed aspect on the fourth house. So these people may be changing homes or desiring to leave their homes. Moon is in the third house, so again, cordiality, courtesy are indicated. Rahu is in the sixth house, so again, stomach issues are an indication of this particular kind of problem, or stomach worries. And let's see now, Mercury, Mars, and Sun are in the 11th house, forming what calls a wealth combination, or Dana Yoga. And so this sign should actually do pretty well financially this month, but it will be slow going. For Capricorn, we're almost done. For Capricorn, we have Saturn in the first house, along with Jupiter. So Jupiter sort of like softens Saturn's authoritarian tendencies. But anyway, with strong Capricorns, we'll start to feel more authoritarian, more demanding after November 7th, November 21st, when Jupiter changes signs. I should have mentioned that earlier. Jupiter changes signs this month. And also you'll see some improvement in financial growth for this sign towards the end of the month. Rahu is in the fifth house, so some problems or dissatisfaction with children. And Mercury, Saturn, and Sun are all in that's the 10th house. And that should be good for career growth and career expansion. Let's see now. Venus is in the 12th house, or Ketu is in the 11th house, so don't trust your friends. Venus is in the 12th house, but expenditures will be made for good reason, or they'll result in savings. And that's it for Sagittarius. And that's it for Capricorn, excuse me. For Aquarius has Rahu in the fourth, so again, some disruption in home life. Mercury, Saturn, and Sun in the ninth house, so that should give some luck in terms of career life. Ketu is in the 10th house, so people's careers contributions are generally going to be ignored. And finally, Saturn and Jupiter are in the 12th house, so that should give increased expenditures this month. Finally, going on to Pisces, last but certainly not least, Pisces has its Lord in the 11th house, so it should be good for gains for this sign. Rahu's in the third, So this sign will be more ambitious than normal. Rahu in the fourth gives Rahu in the third gives Ketu in the ninth, so bosses will seem to be critical or demeaning in terms of the work you do. Sun and Mars are in the eighth house. Sun, Mars, and Mercury are in the eighth house, so there can be some problems with getting truthful answers from your spouse or business partners. And Saturn and Jupiter and Venus is in the 10th house, so that's good for career life. It should give increased foundation, increased prosperity for career. And Moon is in the 12th house, which should be good for um, home life and financial growth. So that's it for this week. I'm going to sign off a little bit early. Stay tuned for the video between Lolita, Donatella, Rebecca, and myself. And also, we are planning some more things. School, music channels, I think books are coming. So, again, I've been promising these things for a long time, but this is really the year of action. This next year. Okay, so if you'd like to contact me for reading or for lessons, 508-525-0001 is the best way to contact me. And I'll see you next week. Namaste.